all shaky cam here. All right. Welcome, guys. Welcome. I'll just give a second for TikTok to load up and let people know that I am live here. One of these days I'm going to figure out how to do this on Instagram as well. I don't have a whole lot of followers over there, but I think tomorrow night what I'm going to do is I'm going to try doing live on Instagram instead of Facebook. So I know there's a software, I think StreamYard, that I can get to do multiple platforms. I'm not ready for that just yet. I'll try one at a time and then kind of ease my way into things. So welcome, guys. If this is your first time joining, my name is Tina. I am a happiness coach. I created these trainings that I do nightly at 9 p.m. For a couple of reasons. One is to be able to help a million people heal past trauma. I do this by sharing my experience, strength, and hope of things that I have gone through, how that relates to health, wealth, relationships, and being able to share those experiences in order to help somebody else. I will tap into various things, from anything from sharing my story of experiences I went through because I was in a very, very dark place, experienced a lot of abuse as a child, and sharing those experiences, although sometimes a little bit tough. I want to do that in order to hopefully reach at least one person out there, to give them hope and strength that they can move forward past this. There is possible to live a happier life. I also do this to share because even if you personally have not experienced trauma or abuse, I can promise you somebody in your company, somebody you work with, probably has. Okay, nobody would have expected that from me, and I actually score a 10 out of 10 on the ACEs, which is Adverse Childhood Experiences test. Not something that you want to get perfect on, but that being said, there's benefits in healing, that you can get through this stuff, that you are able to heal and live a happy, productive life. And that is possible, and I want to do that. And the more open, honest, and authentic I can be, I know that's what helped me the most, is people that actually opened up and they shared the hard stuff. And I went, oh my God, thank God I'm not alone. Oh, you feel that kind of anger, that rage, that kind of stuff? You feel that as well? Oh, okay, good. Yes, I saw your question about, can you cure my fatness? Myself, I used to be almost 400 pounds. And I have been up and down the scale my entire life. Obesity is a trauma response. I work on that daily. I'm not at my goal weight, but I'm on the way. I'm probably around 230-ish now, maybe a little bit below that. So, and the last 2 years, I've dropped 100 pounds, basically without really dieting, without going to the gym, and without doing all kinds of extreme stuff. It was more doing the inner work, the healing changes. Not saying that I don't eat healthy things, I do, but this is some of the ways that I deal with it, and it's through healing that trauma. When I realized that obesity is a trauma response, because I kind of clued into that. They actually have The Body Keeps the Score. I can't remember the author, but if you check out that book, it talks about the relationship between soldiers who have PTSD and women who were obese, and they found out every single one of them had been sexually abused. And there's a correlation there, and it's a trauma response. They have the same trauma responses as veterans that have been in war and seen all kinds of atrocities, right? So when I realized that, I was like, oh shit, I actually have a little bit more work to do. And I think growth is actually an ongoing process. For me, it's extremely rewarding, extremely painful, but extremely rewarding when you finally get that missing piece of the puzzle that you didn't quite understand, why you do some of the things that you know you shouldn't do. And it's like, why the hell am I doing this? Like, what is wrong with me? You're not broken. There's certain ways of behaving that you have as a child, and I'll go into some of this in my talk today, that you make decisions as a child that based on a child's experience, based on a child's logic, that goes into your subconscious, and you start looking for evidence to prove that belief to be true. Otherwise, we're insane. So we try to find ways to believe that what decisions we've made, even if they were done as a child, are true. So over the years, one of the things, and I'll just kind of give a brief overview for those that are joining in and what you might want to stick around for if you are a business owner. I know you're probably busy, but I'm going to kind of get to this towards the end, but I am going to talk about KPIs, alignment, performance reviews, all those kind of things. So, and how trauma can factor into those things, and how change management can also make a difference and help your business become more profitable. Because I believe happy people allow for your business to grow and thrive. Unhappy people in your business, even if they put on a smiling face while you're there, they're treating your customers like shit. They're not doing things. They're not operating at peak performance. Somebody who is truly authentically happy because they're in a healthy work environment is going to perform at a much higher level. Okay, so I wanted to talk about, I was thinking about movies today, and various movies that, you know, that you maybe not remember all of the details, but they kind of sit with you, and you get like one or two like golden nuggets, and you're like, oh man, you actually apply it to your life, that there's things that are really cool. One of those movies for me was G.I. Jane. I know that was a way back a bit, but Demi Moore, I loved her. She was amazing. But she wanted to, I can't remember, I think it was a Navy SEAL that she wanted to do. It was an elite program that she was in, and she was the only woman. Of course, there were all kinds of problems that came up from that. But two things that I got from that movie that I loved and actually embodied in how I live my life is, and oftentimes this kind of gets mistaken. People think that, you know, I'm a doormat or something like that. And it's like, no, there's certain qualities, there's certain characteristics that I resonated with as she was going through this movie. And she went through a lot of hard stuff. So the one, they read a poem in that movie, and it's called, it's about self-pity. And it's, I never saw a wild thing sorry for itself. A small bird will drop frozen dead from a bough without ever having felt sorry for itself. For me, that always resonated, because despite all the shit that I went through, I didn't feel sorry for myself. That's just the way things were, and I didn't even realize how much of a challenge it was, or how much of a problem it was, until I got older, and then I started to share with people, oh yeah, you know, this kind of thing happened, and they were like horrified. They're like, what? Oh shit. I'm like, oh, what? Wait, you didn't go through that? Oh, okay. And that's when the shame came up. So while I was going through it, I didn't know any better. That's just how things were, right? That was just my life, and I had to survive it. I didn't know it wasn't normal to have your sleep disturbed every night because you had a drunken man trying to touch you in inappropriate ways. I didn't know that kind of stuff. So, and that was just normal everyday life for me, right? And the fights, the violence, the screaming matches, the constant wars, the manipulation and the deliberate punishment, the segregation that happened from narcissistic abuse that went on in the home, those were all things that were commonplace. And I didn't even realize it was a problem, which in and of itself is a problem, because if you think that's normal behavior, guess what? You do that shit. It's not good. Now, I did try to improve, and I didn't deliberately try to harm people, but I would be very reactive, very defensive, still work that way, still am getting better every day at it, at not being reactive. I now notice it. I know not to react. I had space and time before I, freak out. I also have, and work environment stuff too, I would get pretty upset about things if I didn't feel like I was being listened to, if I didn't feel like I was being heard or my ideas were being valued. That, even though it was like, a small thing at work, sometimes I'd have that big 80% reaction, which was from the past, of where I told the stuff that I wasn't happy about and that were problems for me, and they weren't valued, they weren't actioned on, nothing was done about those things. So you can see how something small going on today, if you haven't dealt with that past trauma, you're going to react with the force of years of abuse in something that's happening today, and people are like, what the fuck, Tina? Right? Like, calm down, like, it's not that big of a deal. And a friend of mine, she used to say, she goes, like, you will rage over the stupidest thing and yet remain serial killer calm in something that is a huge crisis. And that also was a coping mechanism, because it was dangerous. If I also was reactive when the abuser was being reactive, oh my God, I probably would be dead. But because I had the survival mechanism of being able to shut my emotions down, oftentimes I will have a meltdown over something stupid, like I can't find my pencil, yet I'll be so calm during the crisis, and I'll be the voice of reason, because I am not feeling any emotions, I'm just pure logic in those times. But when I'm in a safe space, look the fuck out, it all comes out. And some poor bastard gets to deal with all of those emotions that I've brought to the surface, because I'm now in a safe environment and I have like a complete shit fit over nothing, right? So now I can laugh at that. It wasn't funny going through it, and it wasn't funny for the other person either. They're like, what the fuck? And I'm sure it brought up stuff for them too, but there's an awareness, and there's healing that comes from it, because when we actually do that inner work and then somebody brings something like that to us, we can stay calm, but it's not just because we're in a pure logic shutdown kind of mode and then we have a freak out. It's because we can empathize. We've done the work. We know where you are. We know what you've been through. It's like, yeah, don't worry. You get through it. You're on the right track. Keep going, right? So those kind of things are really important as you're going through and doing the healing work. So that was one of the things from the movie G.I. Jane. The second takeaway that I got from him is, so it was towards the end, and they were going through, I don't know if it was their Hell Week or whatever. So they've been going through trial after trial after, test after test. And it's like physical violence. They're putting her through, threatening to rape her and stuff like that. It was like really graphic. And it actually had more of an effect on the other male soldiers that were watching her having to go through this. And she was like getting beat up really bad, and he was being extra hard on her, and it was actually the men that broke before her, and he had made some sort of comment about that's why they don't have women in war. I know that's not the case now, but that's why they don't want that, is because the men have this protective mechanism in them, and hearing a woman cry actually was more detrimental to their safety than having a woman back them up, kind of thing. And it just kind of got me thinking, because as I've gone through this healing journey the past couple of years, there's been a lot of things that I've kind of reviewed, especially with like masculine energy, feminine energy, roles of men and women and stuff like that. And of course, thinking of military stuff too, and the correlation between trauma survivors and military. And I was thinking, men, they provide this strong framework. And I think part of why it's mostly men in the military, I know that's not the case now, there's still women that go in there, but I think it's actually a performance thing of men actually break easier and faster than women. And that's not to say one is stronger than the other. It's like a different type of strength. There's like, men are more like the steel frame, the protective framework. And then women are more like the strength of a seatbelt that can bend and flex and keep you safe in a car, where a man would be like the framework of the car, making sure that you don't get crushed in the process, kind of thing. And so thinking of the GI Jane and how the men broke first, it's like, oh, okay, I take this more and I extrapolate this more to like a logic perspective in business. It's like, oh, okay, a lot of the principles and the thought processes in business and the frameworks of business are designed to, with force in mind of, give the guy the hard stuff and he'll break, and then he gets the lesson and he learns it because he's got a lower pain threshold, and he gets it and he starts performing properly quickly. Unfortunately, women have a much higher pain tolerance level. It's kind of part of our DNA. We have a higher bullshit meter, like we can put up with so much more, whether that's training, conditioning, genetics, I don't know. I'm not a scientist, nor do I play one on TV. All I know is that women tend to have a really high resilience rate. So if you look at it from that perspective, and then you put that in a business perspective of trying to get things done the most effective and efficient way, it's not effective, it's not efficient to actually put women through those kind of tests, because a seatbelt, like if you think of it, it's like you can ram all kinds of force into a seatbelt. It doesn't break. It won't break like that. Whereas you put steel and you have enough force, then you can break it, right? Especially if it's cold. So you can have those kind of things, or extreme heat or extreme cold. You put a seatbelt, extreme heat, extreme cold, it's not really going to make a whole lot of difference. But you can break a seatbelt apart if you do death by 1,000 cuts, right? So there's different methods in being able to break down a woman compared to break down a man. A woman will break down in slow progression, these little cuts along the way that start to build up. And the problem is you don't really notice how much damage has been done until it's usually too late. So I just thought that was an interesting takeaway, and I thought of it being from an efficiency perspective, the different techniques. Maybe, I don't know if there's any military guys watching this or whatever, but maybe there's some techniques that need to be improved when you're dealing with men versus women and how they break, and being able to expedite the process so that they get the lesson quicker. Because apparently I've taken a long time. Why? Because I have an extremely high tolerance for pain threshold because of what I've been through. It's like, it's normal. In fact, not that I am not challenging the universe, God, or anything else like that, but even with what I've been through, it's like, I know there's worse. There's way worse. So I'm grateful for what I've been through. But I'm ready to get out of that now. So, yeah. So those are my two takeaways from the movie G.I. Jane. It's I think a late 80s movie, maybe early 90s, something like that. Yeah, good movie. Watch it. Really, really good. And I think if this was fun for you guys, let me know in the comments. Like, comment, subscribe, share, tap the screen, show some energy, show some love. Because this helps boost the algorithm. It helps me reach more people. If you find this helpful and you want me to kind of go through different movie reviews, hey Kitu, good to see you. If you want me to go through movie reviews, or if you want to share a movie that you felt was impactful to you, so like the G.I. Jane one with the pity poem, that you've never seen a wild thing. Aw, thank you. Feel sorry for itself, right? And that to me resonated so much, because it's like you just go through the things that you need to go through, and know that on the other side that you can get out. Do I make movies? Not yet. I'm sure if you give my ADHD enough time, I'll probably get to that. But right now, the best I can do is some Facebook Lives, TikTok Lives, and then I post them on YouTube. So that's where you go with that. Okay, so let's talk about performance reviews, and then we'll go into KPIs and stuff like that. So I was thinking a lot along the lines. So this brings up more of the change management and looking at the old ways of doing things. Thank you, Kitu. Thank you so much. Looking at the old ways of doing things. So a typical performance review, and I've had to do many of them where you kind of have your set role requirements, and then you might have some stretch goals or personal targets that you're trying to reach. And then if you have like more of a 50-50 where I'm good, camera space, good to see you. If you have more of a 50-50, it's like the employee puts their assessment and then the supervisor or the manager puts their assessment. Quit acting tough because you're not. I'm not cool? Oh no, I'm so heartbroken because I wasn't trying to be cool at all. So I've achieved my goal. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So performance reviews, you'll have two, like the double perspective where the employee gives their perspective and then the manager gives theirs. And I was thinking today, a lot of times those goals, those targets, there's some lag that ends up happening where they aren't usually aligned with the business goals. There's different things, and it's usually very, very stressful on both sides. Both for the employee, that they have to, oh, okay, every year it's like doing your report card. What did I do? And oh no, right? And it's this thing you have to, you feel anxious about, you have to get it out of the way, and your boss doesn't feel good because they've got to do this for the whole team. And now if they have to give some critical feedback, then they're now worried, is this staff going to be unhappy because they're not getting a performance review that they felt that they deserved, or now they're upset that they didn't get their raise because it's tied in with raises and all that kind of stuff. And even if you did a good job, like there's been a lot of times I've got exceptional on my performance review, and it's like not for no other reason other than I do my job and then I do other things beyond the job. So I always go above and beyond, and it was just normal, right? But the problem is even when I got exceptional, I was already at the high end of the pay scale, so they couldn't really give me a whole lot more, and I got red circled a lot. And that was not just one company, that was multiple companies. Because whatever ceiling, whatever barrier they kind of gave me, I rushed towards it, and then I got stuck there. And other than getting promoted or leaving the company, there wasn't really any way to increase my revenue, increase my income, increase the amount of money I could generate based on the effort that I put in. So when you have those kind of things and you have really strong players in the mix, you get that a couple of years in a row, and then you're kind of like, it doesn't matter if I do or not. I already outperform everybody on the team, so and that's not coming across boastful. It's just I had also started in a job that was actually easier than what my skill set was, because at the time I took the role, it was all that I could get, and I needed something right away because my husband had lost his job and we both needed money to survive. Thank you. Not my nostrils today, Alfred? Oh my goodness, but you like my top. Thank you so much. So it's good to see you back. I'm really glad that you keep coming back, so welcome. So those kind of things, it's like when you're going through the performance reviews and it's now too easy for them, you can't really give them that much of a stretch goal. So in performance review, reviews, aligning those reviews with the values of the company. And I'm not just talking the goals for the business that year or certain things, but aligning it with the values, right? So, and using the performance review to actually start to solve problems. So, for example, if some of the people on the team aren't really taking ownership of their role, they're not taking responsibility of that, rather than giving them that feedback, changing the performance review to align with the value of that you want them to take ownership, you want them to address the problems and provide the solutions. So instead of you giving the feedback, changing it so that they give you the feedback, and usually on a more consistent basis rather than a yearly review. So changing that to, say, a quarterly review, having them call out the things that they feel are important to achieve the role and what roadblocks they are actually experiencing within the role, and then how do they see is the best way to solve that. So it's like a small way to start implementing change management practices into a performance review, where instead of you giving the feedback that your word is law kind of thing, right? The top down, I am king kind of leadership approach, to a bottom up, so that they start developing the skills of assessing what is required for this job, what is required to do this job in a better way, who else needs to be involved, and having them kind of report what it is they did, rather than here's all the things you need to do and did you check all the boxes. So rather than the to-do list, a to-done list. It's like, okay, these are the things that we've done and these are the things that are important, because a lot of times there's the job description role, and then I don't know about you, but it's like they had the outline of it, and it's like, okay, maybe one of those things was important, but then day to day in the real life of the role, there were like these 20 other things that I did, but because that wasn't part of the performance review, I'd always have like whole lists, and maybe that's why I got exceptional, because I would list out all the other shit I did that wasn't part of my job, that wasn't part of that. So, and I think being able to add that to somebody performance review starts to condition them to the behaviors that you want on an ongoing basis. Maybe not just for their level, but maybe for the next level above. So now you're starting to build a pool of people that are conditioned and starting to be trained and be readied and understand the principles of what it is that you want for the next level, not just the level that they're at, so that they're always forward looking, that they're always looking down the path of where they want to grow within the business, and that gives them a growth minded perspective in how they do their role. You also would want to change things so that it's a bit more like a pipeline kind of, right? A pipeline of employees, right? So if you always have this pool of employees that they are taking the initiative, they are taking the ownership of their role, and they are looking forward out, although they don't have the full responsibility, being able to have them explain why they made the decision that those things were the things that were important on the review. It starts getting them aware of the things, and then the supervisor, the manager, can just kind of give a little bit of guidance or correction of saying, hey, have you thought of this? I think those are great ideas. Have you thought of these things as well? Because maybe you didn't know that these other things that were coming down the pipe need to be factored in. And giving them the benefit of the doubt of like, oh shit, you know what? I didn't know about those things. Let me take this back and start to figure those things out. Starting to condition them in some way, coaching them in some way of letting them know that that is a new way, a new perspective of how you do performance reviews and what expectations that you would have for them. So you want to get your employees to be able to self-reflect and value their own contributions. And the other benefit of it is you may have the expectation that, hey, their role is 1, 2, 3, and really they've got 1 to 20 and you weren't aware of 1 to 20, right? And you might realize it's like, hey, there's some scope creep that's happening here. These other, 5 to 10 things, they should actually belong to this other department. And or look at, it's like, oh, that other department has that, we're actually going to take that piece over because it actually belongs in our department, and that wasn't part of the original. So you can start to make adjustments as well, and then you can also make expansions as well with with your team, with your employees, with the performance reviews, and this allows them to take more of an ownership role of how the performance review is going to go, and they're always constantly looking at how can I do my job better, because this is how I'm going to have to report on it, right? This also brings me to KPI alignments as well. So a lot of times KPIs, they get so focused on quantity versus quality, because quality is very difficult to measure. Quantity, it's like, oh, did we get 1 sale? Yes, great. How good was that sale? Oh, we got 5 sales and 4 of them refunded, or 3 of them refunded, and the other 2 that stayed, 1 was a good client, the other one has been a nightmare for us, right? So you can have KPIs that measure that, and then everybody just kind of focuses and gravitates towards that. And I'll give you a real life example. So, and there's always something within the business that ends up having this of, there's a piece of the business that ends up costing you quite a bit of money, and you don't realize you're bleeding money until it becomes a huge problem. It's kind of like having a pipe that leaks that's behind the wall that you don't really see, you don't really pay attention to it. You know that there's this dripping noise, but you don't really do anything until you start to see some water damage, you start to smell black mold, something like that, right? Then you're like, oh shit, now this is a really big problem, and now you need a team of people to come in to clean it up. So example, in transport and logistics, a lot of times there was a big push on, we need to maximize the trailer capacity, we need to cube these out, we need to make sure every square inch of the trailer is maximized, that there's freight on the trailer, because the more you can get on the trailer, the lower your freight costs are. Makes sense, makes perfect sense, something that you can easily measure too. It's like, okay, what was the cube measurement on this trailer going out? And we are setting the benchmark at this. If it is over this amount, then we know we're doing a good job, we're on the right track, and everything. So, big push, we did that, all the people, they jump on board, they're on that. And what ended up happening was, although we maximized the trailer capacity, on the back end, another department deals with this piece, overshorts and damages, OS&Ds. We had an extremely high increase of overshorts and damages. And guess what? Nobody wants to deal with claims in freight. That the product's coming to the customer damaged. Now the customer's all pissed off too, because it's like now they have to reorder, and now they're short stock and they lost sales, and da-da-da-da-da. There's all kinds of trickle down impact because they're only focused on the one KPI that they can quantifiably measure. And they are not measuring the quality or the impact or the fallout, because it's only this one department. This one department's, patting themselves on the back. Yay, we got the cube up to what it's supposed to be. Meanwhile, there's a whole shit show that's being caused for a different department. And there's also impact, customer service wise, order management, all these different things that end up happening because you're not looking at the whole ecosystem. You're not looking at things as a whole. You're making the decisions as silos in certain departments. And the KPIs are only geared towards quantifiable measurements, because it's really hard to quantify quality. So it's something that you have to be aware of when you are creating KPIs. Are we creating KPIs that actually is not going to traumatize the other departments, or if they do start to speak out about it, that it is listened to, it's heard, because you know what? A lot of times the OS&Ds, they didn't start happening or start getting paid attention to until we had claims in the millions of dollars. And those were the smaller claims. So those are the kinds of things that can end up happening, and it can be extremely costly. And just like a pipe that's leaking behind a wall that you kind of know something about, but it's not that big of a problem right now. It ends up, and it's usually two things. So one, it's usually women that are doing those tedious OS&D jobs, okay, because nobody likes to deal with those. It requires a lot of customer service skills because you're trying to get people to pay claims, and you kind of need somebody who's a little bit nicer. The guys that are, focused on the KPI measurements, they tend to be black and white, goal-oriented, competitive, we did the thing, and everybody else is in trauma behind them. But so those are the kinds of things that you need to factor in, because it can cost your business quite a bit of money if you're not looking at those things. Also, aligning the KPIs so that departments don't have opposing KPIs, that this team wins, and if this team wins, then this team loses. That's not a good thing. So operations won because they maximized the trailer capacity. OS&D lost because their claims were through the roof, and because there were so many, and it takes a long time to process claims. You have to get pictures, you have to get insurance, you have to get all kinds of paperwork involved, and then you have to track things. It's a very slow, long, tedious process that nobody wants to look at, because everybody is focused on, did the load get there on time? I don't care that 5 cases got damaged on that. I don't care if a pallet tipped over. Those are the kinds of things that nobody wants to deal with, so it's really challenging to try and get responses and all those kind of things. But now the OS&D team is getting beat up because their outstanding claims that haven't been processed is really, really high. And nobody's going to tie that back to looking at the cube maximization until it becomes a huge problem. Then they'll listen, right? So that's just a small example of how having KPIs only being focused on a measurable, quantitative approach and not looking at the overall impact of that. And because a lot of times KPIs will get implemented within the business, and then nobody goes back and looks, did that solution that was implemented cause any ripple effects? Did it end up having a negative impact somewhere else within the business? Who else was affected by it? Now, it may not have been something that was easily spotted in this particular case, because usually there's like a 90-day lag before they apply for the claim or something like that. So it's there's all kinds of gymnastics and stuff like that, technical stuff that I don't want to get into and bore everybody with that kind of stuff. But so there can be a bit of a lag, but one of the things with change management is actually going back and making sure that the solution that is implemented was actually effective. Is it bringing the desired results? Is it and addressing any additional problems that you hadn't anticipated? Because every solution, there's usually, you break one thing, there's 20 other things to fix now, right? And that was always a joke that we had when I was doing IT stuff. It's like you'd fix one thing in the system and not realize that it was tied to these other things. And now you'd have like 20 people come to you that their reports weren't working because you put a space or a dot in the code somewhere, and then it just messed everything all up. So these are little ways that trauma can start to happen in the workplace unintentionally. Everybody's just trying to do a good job, but then depending on the value, the measurable value of that particular department, and what their KPIs are. So the OS&D department, their only KPI was to measure how quickly they processed the claims. And it didn't factor in, okay, by carrier or, what type of problems were being caused by what types of claims, right? So there were different ways. So we had to go through, and we did a review of it, and we started to expand out how we're measuring the KPIs, what kind of things, because they were only focused on how quickly did it get paid, so we don't have to deal with this headache. Not looking at it from a more analytical, preventative measure of, okay, what carriers are we dealing with? Oh, we have a ton of claims that we could reduce if we just got rid of this carrier. Oh, well, we don't want to get rid of this carrier because he's the lowest cost carrier, and that's going to increase our transport costs by $50 a load if we go to the next carrier. It's like, well, so that's causing an increase in cost in one area of the business, but meanwhile, there's a higher cost in another area of the business that is not getting factored into that original freight cost, because this crappy carrier is now costing a lot of money on the OS&Ds. So these are things that when you put in a KPI, make sure that you're looking at the whole picture. How is it impacting the other departments? Are you having to put in additional solutions only because you didn't want to incur extra cost on the front end for something? So that's a little bit of a business ramble, a little bit of change management, but a lot of times what happens, and I've had to come into departments to try and solve these problems. By the time I come into there, they're just both at each other's throats. They don't care what the other person's thinking. They don't care, just go fix that one. They're the problem, not me, right? So having to come in with the referee whistle and be able to find a solution that works for both, so that we're not increasing the transport costs and we're also mitigating the OS&Ds. So those are very common challenges that end up happening within any business. This could be no different, because I've had this with sales and operations. Sales would be like, we got them in the door, it's your problem to deliver now. And it's like, there would be timing issues, there would be all kinds of other stuff. And then the sales team, they try to push some paperwork onto the sales team. And if they were a little bit slower, they could take it. But then as things got busier, it's like, why are we doing all this paperwork? We should just be doing the sales. All kinds of conflict ends up arising in the business because not looking at the whole picture, not being able to look at it from a change management people perspective, and understanding a lot of times quick solutions get put into place and they're not reevaluated because it stopped the squeaky wheel issue. So the squeaky wheel gets the oil, there's usually another squeaky wheel that ends up requiring more attention, and meanwhile, the quieter kids, the kids like me, that they seemed okay, right? I didn't seem like I was a problem. My brother always was a problem. He got attention. He had low grades, and so the focus was always on him because his report card did not show that he was doing well. So they focused on him, and they rewarded him when he made slight improvements. I got punished when my report card went from 2 at being 100% to why aren't the rest at 100% kind of thing. So those are the kinds of things that you can start to look at within your business, that there's little ways that trauma ends up happening, and if it's not dealt with, if it's neglected, which is the worst form of trauma, it will cost you greater in the long run. No different than a leaky pipe behind the wall. So guys, with that, I think I'm going to wrap it up. If you hopped in late here, I will be uploading this to YouTube. You can check me out on YouTube, Coach Tina B 125. Feel free to subscribe. You'll get notification when the replays are uploaded there. You'll also see some of my artwork. I'm putting that as part of the thumbnails. You can check me out on TikTok or Facebook. I am uploading the artwork on Redbubble, which is part of my healing process. It helps me stay grounded, helps me stay happy, and allows me to continue to offer this kind of coaching, this kind of experience for people to help people heal trauma in their personal lives and in their professional lives. So with that, guys, I'm going to wrap it up, and we will talk to you again tomorrow, 9 p.m. Eastern. Take care. Bye.